Carl Jung uncovered the ultimate empath strategy against gaslighting. And it's not collecting proof, not clarifying your position more, not forcing them to accept facts. It's an approach that seems utterly incorrect, yet it strips the gaslighter's control immediately. In 1921, Jung helped a client, let's name her Elena, who'd devoted 3 years attempting to persuade her spouse that discussions he rejected truly occurred. She maintained thorough diaries, preserved correspondence, noted precise timelines and details. The harder she compiled facts, the stronger he claimed she was hallucinating. When she reached Jung, Elena no longer trusted her recollections. She'd stay up reviewing dialogues, doubting if she'd fabricated them. She teetered on total mental breakdown. Jung shared a revelation that transformed her situation. You're not going insane. You're entangled in unwinnable contest. The strongest counter isn't superior documentation. It's declining to engage. If you've sensed madness while striving to demonstrate your rationality, you're caught in what Jung termed the gaslighting snare. Grasping why empaths tumble into it uncovers the sole effective tactic. When Elena initially visited Jung's clinic in Zurich, she carried 3 years of records. Notebooks packed with talks her spouse later refuted, messages he swore he never dispatched, logs of vows he maintained he never uttered. She'd invested countless hours arranging this material, linking timelines, constructing an unbreakable argument. She informed Jung, if I can simply display the evidence to him, he'll be compelled to recognize the facts, and we can progress at last. But Jung spotted what Elena missed. She was involved in a setup rigged against her. Her spouse wasn't rejecting truth due to missing data. He was rejecting truth because rejection granted him dominance. Each instance Elena sought to verify events, she surrendered that dominance anew. This defines the gaslighting snare. When your core empath strength turns into the tool wielded against you. Empaths are programmed to pursue honesty, to cherish genuineness, to think that comprehension fosters bonds. These are wonderful traits, but exploiters abuse them mercilessly. Here's what Jung grasped that Elena hadn't. This dynamic isn't about facts, it's about authority. The individual warping truth isn't mistaken about events. They're committed to confusing you about events. When you assemble proof, you're proceeding from the belief that this is an honest dispute over details. But truth warping isn't a dispute. It's a dominance maneuver. You're aiming to triumph in a discussion that was never rooted in facts initially. Contemporary brain science clarifies why this is so ruinous. Bessel van der Kolk studies on trauma indicate that truth warping generates what he labels cognitive dissonance overload. Your mind holds two opposing data sets, what you lived through and what you're informed you lived through. The mind can't accept both as valid, so it must select, rely on yourself or rely on the bond. And for empaths who frequently absorbed in youth to favor others' truths over their own, the mind often picks bond over truth. This generates a division in awareness. One segment recognizes what transpired. Another segment yearns desperately to embrace their narrative so the bond endures. This division is what causes you to feel insane, because essentially, you're being pushed toward mental splintering. Research on trauma bonding demonstrates that this dynamic triggers identical brain areas as physical mistreatment. When someone switches between nullifying your truth and offering affection, your mind grows hooked on easing the cognitive dissonance by adopting their account of occurrences. Elena had endured this for 3 years. Her spouse would reject a dialogue. She'd reveal her diary note. He'd claim, you recorded that due to your suspicion. She'd clarify why she wasn't suspicious. He'd respond, look, you're becoming guarded. That's proof you're unbalanced. Every effort to affirm her soundness turned into proof of her unbalance. Every bit of proof she collected became another chance for him to imply she was fixated. The contest was fixed, and Jung realized the sole victory path was ceasing participation. If you've attempted to validate your truth to someone who rejects it, comment, I compiled proof. Because comprehending why proof never succeeds exposes the 3 tactics empaths employ that truly reinforce the exploitation, and why the strongest tactic demands an action that feels entirely unnatural. Jung noted that empaths confronting truth warping usually rotate through the 3 tactics. Each appears reasonable. Each worsens the scenario. Elena's diaries occupied shelf upon shelf, every dialogue logged, every vow noted, every discrepancy marked. When I ultimately present all this to him, he'll be forced to acknowledge. He'll have no option but to concede the facts. In therapy, Jung inquired of her, and when you've displayed proof previously, what occurred? Elena's expression dropped. He claims I'm fixated. That maintaining these logs demonstrates I'm suspicious. That ordinary folks don't record every word their partner utters. So, the proof you amass to show you're not mad becomes his proof that you are mad. Elena agreed, eyes welling. That was precisely what transpired. This is the initial snare. assuming that sufficient proof will compel recognition. But individuals dedicated to rejecting truth don't reject due to absent knowledge. They reject because rejection benefits them. One of Jung's other clients had taped talks with her exploitative companion. When she replayed them, he claimed, "You altered these. You're attempting to trap me. This is deranged conduct." The tape, undeniable proof of his precise statements, became evidence of her unbalance. The proof snare operates thus. Your efforts to log truth get repositioned as fixated conduct, which turns into extra proof of your psychological unbalance. Sylvia Plath maintained detailed diaries recording Ted Hughes's infidelities and psychological torment. He persistently asserted she was envious, suspicious, psychologically unwell. Her diaries, which ought to have confirmed her truth, were subsequently utilized as proof of her unbalance. Following her passing, Hughes managed her literary holdings and eradicated substantial sections of her journals. The proof never safeguarded her. Dr. Jennifer Freyd's studies on DRVO elucidate this dynamic. When faced with proof, exploiters pursue three phases: reject the truth, assault the individual offering proof, invert roles, positioning themselves as the casualty of untrue claims. Elena lived this precisely. She'd offer proof, he'd reject. She'd persist, he'd assault. "You're tormenting me with your suspicious allegations." Then invert. "I'm the casualty here. I must tiptoe around your unbalance." Empaths think logging fosters responsibility, but exploiters reposition logging as torment. Every diary note becomes evidence you're fit-fitted. Every preserved message becomes evidence you're domineering. The proof snare maintains your participation in the contest. You continue amassing validation. They continue rejecting. You amass more validation. They heighten the rejection. The loop persists until you succumb to fatigue or embrace their truth to safeguard your soundness. When proof failed, Elena attempted clarifying. Varied terms, varied perspectives, varied methods. If I could merely articulate it plainly enough, he'd recognize what he's doing. He'd comprehend how his rejection affects me. Hundreds of clarifications, and never once did he say, "Now I get it, you're correct." That did occur. Hours of clarifying, her voice hoarse by each dialogue's close, her thoughts clouded from hunting for the ideal terms that would ultimately penetrate. He'd hear acknowledge, then, "I acknowledge your words, but you're recalling it incorrectly." Or, "I grasp you sense that, but your senses don't alter truth." He employed counseling jargon, affirmation jargon, but beneath, the intent was evident. "Your truth is invalid." Jung helped another client whose companion was even more refined. "I affirm your emotions, but I can't affirm a fabricated recollection. I value you too highly to support your illusions." Truth warping cloaked in empathy. "I'm rejecting your truth because I cherish you." Studies on exploitation phases reveal that perpetual clarification drains mental capacities. Your mind is laboring extra trying to resolve the cognitive dissonance, seeking the ideal terms that will connect the divide, but no ideal clarification exists. Because the issue isn't your articulation, it's their dedication to rejection. Elena would clarify until drained. The following day they'd restart. He'd reject something fresh. She'd clarify anew. The loop devoured her existence. Empaths think comprehension builds bonds. Exploiters abuse this conviction. They permit you to clarify indefinitely, which achieves three goals. It drains you. It sustains your involvement in repairing the bond. It blocks you from acting on what you recognize. The clarification loop is a snare master's dialogue. One woman penned during her bleakest phase, "Maybe I am insane. Maybe all I believe I perceive is illusion. How can I rely on my mind when he appears so sure? What if I'm the issue?" The woman was Zelda Fitzgerald. Her spouse F. Scott Fitzgerald was a drinker who engaged in affairs, but when Zelda challenged him, he maintained she was psychologically unwell, envious, suspicious. He committed her to institutions repeatedly. She noted in her diaries about questioning her soundness, doubting every insight, pondering if she was the unbalanced one. Zelda was committed while Scott's drinking and unfaithfulness persisted unquestioned. The truth warping triumphed. She questioned herself into compliance. By the time Elena reached Jung, she was sinking in the identical vortex. Perhaps I am exaggerating. Perhaps I do recall incorrectly. Perhaps I am overly reactive. He seems so assured. What if he's accurate and I'm the confused one? This is the third snare, the self-questioning vortex, the most cunning snare overall. Truth warping doesn't merely cause you to question particular recollections. It causes you to question your ability to sense truth precisely. It forms a rift between you and your own insight. Jung identified this as a type of disconnection. Elena was no longer unified with her own encounters. She'd observe something occur, then promptly query, did I truly observe that? Did I interpret it properly? Am I being overly reactive? The perpetual querying shattered her bond with herself. The instant you question your insight, You've delivered them the tool because now they needn't persuade you your truth is false. You're accomplishing it yourself. Studies on feeling and insight indicate that when someone you're bonded to repeatedly opposes your encounters, the mind confronts a dilemma: sustain precise insight or sustain the bond. For empaths, particularly those with youthful backgrounds of nullification, the mind frequently selects bond. It's less alarming to question yourself than to acknowledge that someone you cherish is intentionally warping truth. This forms what experts term betrayal trauma. Your mind recognizes something is amiss, but can't wholly admit it without destabilizing the bond. Elena lived this as continual reconsideration. She'd replay dialogues compulsively, attempting to ascertain if she'd misread. She'd examine her responses, pondering if she was too sentimental. She'd interrogate everything about herself while interrogating nothing about him. The self-questioning vortex is the ultimate phase before breakdown. Elena was there upon finding Jung. If you've been mired in the clarification loop or submerging in self-questioning, comment, I kept doubting myself. Because these three tactics, amassing proof, perpetual clarification, self-questioning, all possess one deadly defect. They sustain your participation in a contest rigged for your defeat. But Jung instructed Elena something that altered everything. In their third meeting, Jung provided Elena a directive that appeared unfeasible: cease attempting to persuade him, cease amassing proof, cease clarifying, actually cease addressing truth with him completely. Elena was appalled. But if I don't protect my insight, he triumphs. He gets to dictate what's factual. Jung disagreed. He already dictates what's factual in his thoughts. The issue is, will you permit him to dictate what's factual in yours? This is the strongest tactic. Calculated retreat from the truth discussion. Not fleeing, not surrendering, but declining to join a dispute about what transpired. The realization was revolutionary. Exploiters demand your involvement in the dispute about truth. Without your involvement, the contest can't proceed. The method has 4 components. Jung instructed Elena to log differently, not to validate to him, but to affirm for herself. Record what transpired, not to display to anyone. To remind yourself, this is what I lived. This is what I recognize. The diary transition from proof to confirmation, from outer instrument to inner foundation. Each time a spouse rejected something, rather than displaying the diary, Elena would review it alone and reflect. I recognize what transpired. His rejection doesn't modify truth. This is the base. You rely on your insight as ultimate arbiter, not because you're infallible, but because your insight is the sole truth you can operate from. The subsequent time Elena's spouse rejected a dialogue, she applied a fresh tactic. Not yes you did, I noted it, here's the timeline, but I recognize what I lived, I'm not addressing this anymore. Then quiet, he pressed her at again. Inventing things, she reiterated. I recognize what I lived, I'm not addressing this. He intensified. This is mad, you can't simply decline to discuss this. She rose, I'm not addressing this anymore, and exited the space. This seemed unachievable to Elena. Every part of her yearned to protect herself, to clarify, to force him to recognize. But the dispute is the snare. When you protect, you're embracing the idea that your truth is negotiable. It's not. Declining the dispute isn't hostile. It's not even protective. It's merely refusing to handle your truth as debatable. Essential phrases. I recognize what I lived. I'm not addressing this anymore. You can think what you wish. I recognize what transpired. This discussion is finished. Then genuine quiet. Not clarification of why you're concluding the discussion. Just concluding it. By month 4, Elena ceased attempting to alter his thoughts. She altered her actions based on what she recognized. Without awaiting his concession, without his affirmation, without his admission, she proceeded on truth. She shifted to a distinct bedroom, established a distinct financial account, ceased joining gatherings with him, began devising departure plan. Her spouse was astonished. You can't proceed without consulting me. I'm not seeking approval. I'm notifying you of my choices. This seemed severe to her, but actions communicate when terms falter. She didn't require his admission to safeguard herself. The toughest component, acknowledging that he might never concede the facts, he could reject truth eternally. That was his decision. But his rejection didn't compel her to question herself. She could recognize what she recognized while he rejected what he rejected. This entailed acknowledging that the bond might not endure facts. Why this tactic is strongest, it eliminates the energy. Exploiters require your involvement in the dispute, your protectiveness, your efforts to validate yourself. Without these, the pattern crumbles. You're not combating them. You're not clarifying yourself. You're merely existing in your truth while they exist in theirs. This prompts exploiters to intensification, but the intensification exposes their genuine character. If you're prepared to cease participating in the contest, comment, I'm retreating from the dispute. Because what Jung instructed Elena demanded not just comprehension, but bravery to confront what occurs when you cease joining. Elena applied Jung's method across 6 months. Here's what transpired. Month 1, she halted amassing proof, halted clarifying. The initial week felt intolerable. Each time a spouse rejected something, she yearned to validate it. Her fingers ached for her diary. Her lips yearned to clarify, but she maintained the boundary. I recognize what happened. I'm not addressing this. He was perplexed initially. This wasn't the contest they'd engaged in for 3 years. Month 2, her spouse intensified sharply. When retreat from the dispute didn't draw her back, he amplified. Fresh claims emerged. You're being distant. You're excluding me. You're penalizing me with quiet. This is psychological torment. Jung had cautioned her. When you cease participating, they intensify. This confirms you're proceeding correctly. Exploiters need you involved. When you detach, they'll attempt everything to reel you back. Her spouse enlisted others. He informed acquaintances. She's behaving oddly. I'm concerned about her psychological well-being. She declines to interact. Experts term these enlisted supporters flying monkeys, individuals the exploiter employs to coerce you back into the contest. By the 3rd month, acquaintances were contacting. He's truly worried about you. Perhaps you should discuss with him what's troubling you. Elena replied, I've discussed for 3 years. I'm finished discussing, but he claims, you're declining to interact. I'm declining to dispute my truth. That's distinct. Some acquaintances comprehended. Some selected his narrative. Elena had to embrace forfeiting bonds constructed on her self-deception. Jung had informed her, every individual who departs because you ceased, questioning yourself is disclosing that they required you questionable. Release them. By the 4th month, she began formulating choices based on what she recognized. She shifted to distinct bedroom. She established distinct financial account. She ceased attending gatherings with him. She began devising departure plan. Her spouse was astonished. You can't proceed without consulting me. I'm not seeking approval. I'm notifying you of my choices. This seemed severe to her, but she was being rational. She was proceeding on truth instead of feigning his rejection altered truth. Over the ensuing 2 months, claims grew more extreme. You're engaging in infidelity. You're pilfering from me. You're turning everyone against me. The truth warping strengthened because it was faltering. Frantic efforts to reclaim authority. Jung had informed Elena, his intensification is proof you're triumphing. Exploiters only intensify when they're forfeiting authority. By month 6, Elena recognized with utter clarity her spouse would never concede facts. He was devoted to rejection. She departed not in bewilderment, not questioning herself, not pondering if she'd endeavored sufficiently. She departed recognizing, I observed what I observed. I recognize what I recognize. His rejection doesn't alter truth. The expected pattern when you cease participating. Phase 1, perplexity. Why aren't you protecting yourself? Phase 2, intensification. More theatrical claims, enlisting others. Phase 3, fury. How dare you handle me thus? Phase 4, negotiation. Let's merely discuss this sensibly. Phase 5, defamation effort. Informing everyone you're unbalanced. Very few concede facts. Most intensify until you either rejoin the contest or depart completely. Truth warping demands your involvement in the discussion. Retreat eliminates their authority, but retreat demands embracing the bond may not endure facts. And that's why most remain ensnared rather than hazard the forfeiture. The contradiction. Remaining in the contest ensures mental ruin. You'll forfeit yourself striving to validate yourself. Exiting the contest hazards bond ruin, but the bond was already founded on your self-deception. A bond that demands you to question your own insight is not a bond. It's a captivity scenario. If you've lived the intensification after establishing limits, comment, they intensified when I ceased. Because the consequences of exiting the contest demand reconstructing something. The exploitation demolished. Faith in your own insight. 6 months post departing her spouse, Elena sat in Jung's clinic describing a fresh issue. I'm liberated from him, but I'm not liberated from the questioning. I still interrogate everything I sense. How do I rely on myself anew? This is the ultimate task. Mending the rift between you and your insight. Truth warping doesn't merely harm your bond with the exploiter. It harms your bond with yourself. You've absorbed to question your main source of data about truth, your own encounters. The unification process for reconstructing perceptual faith. Begin modest. Don't attempt to rely on your assessment about major matters right away. Elena started with minuscule insights. I sense chilly now. Observe if you wish to query this. Yes, I sense chilly. I'm famished. Observe questioning. Rehearse. Yes, I'm famished. I rely on this. That individual just jumped Q. Observe desiring to think perhaps you misread. Rehearse. No, they jumped. I observed it. Modest truths reiterated daily reconstruct the brain pathway of relying on your insight. Within 2 months, Elena could state, "I'm furious," without promptly querying if she was exaggerating. I disliked this individual without pondering if she was being overly critical. Persist journaling, but with fresh intent, not to validate to others, to affirm yourself. Today this transpired, I lived it this way, this is my truth. The journal turns into a log of your insights being legitimate, being yours, being reliable. Over time you gather proof, not for others, but for yourself. My insights have been precise. I can rely on them. Elena participated in an assistance circle for individuals who'd lived exploitation. For the initial time she discussed her encounters and heard, yes, that transpired. Yes, you observed it plainly. Yes, you're not mad. After truth warping, you require individuals who don't cause you to query your soundness. Individuals who react to your insights with, "I trust you." That's genuine. Rely on yourself, not flying monkeys. Not individuals who say, "Well, perhaps he didn't intend it that way." Not individuals who imply you're overly reactive. Individuals who affirm your truth is legitimate. Your physique recognizes facts even when your thoughts questions. Elena absorbed to observe bodily reactions. When he rejected truth, what did your physique sense? Constriction in my torso, sickness like I couldn't inhale. And when you ultimately relied on your insight, alleviation, buoyancy, like I could inhale anew. The physique doesn't deceive. When something senses incorrect, it is incorrect. Even if you can't express why my physique responds with strain, fear or sickness around someone's narrative of truth, that's data. I rely on the bodily indicator, the unification. After a year of this task, Elena informed Jung, I still question occasionally, but now I detect it. I observe when I'm interrogating myself needlessly, and I can select to rely on my insight. Not I'll never be deceived anew. That's stiffness stemming from trauma, but I rely on myself to recognize what I recognize. That's autonomy. Elena's ultimate realization. For 3 years, I required him to trust me. I believed without his affirmation my truth wasn't genuine. Now I grasp. I don't require anyone to trust me. I trust me. That's sufficient. The strongest tactic isn't a witty retort. It's not an impeccable clarification. It's not even defending yourself immediately. The strongest tactic is this, relying on your insight so thoroughly that no one else's rejection can unsettle it. Declining to dispute truth with someone dedicated to warping. Proceeding on what you recognize irrespective of whether they concede it. This eliminates the exploiter's authority entirely, not by vanquishing them in debate, but by retreating from the contest completely. You didn't endure truth warping to devote the remainder of your existence questioning yourself. You endured it to uncover what Jung recognized. Your insight is the foundation you occupy. No one can seize that foundation unless you deliver it to them. The strongest tactic is retaining your foundation. Thanks for viewing. See you in the next realm.